So here's the story about how I fix my shoulder pain during the bench press, right? Now, I hurt my shoulders once every 1 to 2 years, right? And it's not always a bad injury. I always continue training, and oftentimes I make minimal changes, as you'll see in a minute. But I tend to hurt my shoulder once every 1 to 2 years. It's been happening for years. My very first shoulder injury that I can remember was when I was in college. I was about 19. I had no idea what I was doing, and it kind of ruined my world because I didn't feel like I had any control whatsoever over my training, and training was so important to me that I was just depressed and miserable, right? But since then, I've gotten a lot better. And to be honest, following a few fairly simple steps, we can get most of our patients back in the gym, right, and get them feeling better relatively quickly. So you don't have to have your patients fret so much. There is a solution for this, okay? So first and foremost, I really want to try to keep things as simple as possible. I think people overcomplicate rehab. Do you have to make your rehab more complicated sometimes? Certainly. The large majority of people, though, I really don't think so. So we're going to teach you a few simple steps on how to do this, all right? So step one is to find tolerable substitutions for the bench press and other aggravating movements in the gym. Okay, so we can't continue blowing through pain in the gym. We have to find suitable modifications that allow you to continue training with minimal pain. Okay, number two, strengthen the shoulder. And we're going to focus on the injured area, right? Oftentimes that's the rotator cuff and the helper muscles for the bench press. So we're going to focus on the rotator cuff, serratus anterior, some of the scap muscles, as well as the pecs, delts, and triceps, right? We're going to start with a little bit of weight. And we're going to progressively overload over the course of time. So a little bit of weight and then more weight over the course of time. Easy exercises, harder exercises over the course of time, all right? And then you want to slow transition back to the prior program. So here's my most recent injury, right? And this is kind of an embarrassing one because I was using such little weight. I haven't done a lot of overhead pressing in my training program. That recently. So I wanted to try to get back to some overhead press, and I started with a very light barbell overhead press. And the plan for today was to do 4 sets of 12, right? And I started with 65, and that's quite light. I'm actually a little embarrassed about this. I'm doing sets of 12, and on that very last set, I felt a fairly sharp pain on the back side of my right shoulder. Right? Like, oh man, that doesn't feel good, right? It's one of those ones where you're like, crap, I think I did something bad. I'm not really sure. I'm going to keep training and see how it goes, right? So, lo and behold, I tried doing some additional training. I think my next exercise was dumbbell bench. Yep, so I was supposed to do 4 sets of 15. As I started to warm up, I noticed I had a sharp pain on the back side of my right shoulder during the warm-up sets. This is all taken from my training journal, by the way, so I write all my programming down, and I do a lot of journaling based on how I feel, right? And here's the thing. My shoulder was killing me, and I was trying to find a modification and really wasn't finding much luck. So my shoulder hurt quite a bit during dumbbell bench press. I tried changing the angle. I tried a closer grip to see if that felt any better. Didn't feel better whatsoever. I tried to modify to some other pressing variations. I tried some landmine. I wasn't feeling very good. The dumbbell bench already felt terrible, right? Push-ups were a no-go. I actually was able to tolerate some of the crawling exercises, but I made a decision to try to continue with some pressing because I wanted to try to keep the training stimulus as similar as possible on that day. So I opted into some BFR, right, blood flow restriction training, incline push-ups. So I basically took a barbell, put it in a squat rack so I was inclined on an angle, and just did a whole bunch of repetitions. And what's really, really nice about blood flow restriction training is that you only have to use a small percentage of your 1 rep max, around 20%. So for me, I just pretty much went to failure. I did the typical 30 repetitions first set, 15 the second, 15 the third, 15 the fourth, and I feel like I got a really good training effect for my pressing muscles, my pecs, my delts, my triceps that day, and it wasn't bothersome. So I was able to get through the BFR incline push-ups without much trouble, which is phenomenal because I started the set feeling absolutely god-awful, and I finished that set feeling great, right? Feeling like I'd actually accomplished something, and I wasn't aggravating the shoulder in the process, right? So what I ended up doing over the next few sessions is I had to make sure I was modifying all the other painful movements in the gym. So one of the movements that was giving me trouble was a weighted push-up, right? And I was prescribed to do a weighted push-up with a 2-second lower and the pause at the very top part of the push-up. And what I found is that when I warmed up for the push-ups, they felt terrible also. So again, I went through my shoulder pain and bench press modifications, and the exercise that I stumbled upon that felt pretty good, that was still challenging, was a reverse crawl. So I did a few sets of reverse crawls. I did a lot of high repetition work. Oftentimes when you're trying to decrease stress on a given area, you make the exercise really easy and you do lots and lots of reps so you can still get a little bit of a train effect. And that reverse crawl just really fit the bill for me. So I was able to modify my push-ups with an exercise that was similar, right? And then what happens over the course of time is I want to make sure I focus on the structures within the shoulder that are injured, right? So I'm a physical therapist, right? Obviously, I can do this. Now, if you're watching this, you're not a physical therapist, you should go get evaluated before you try to treat yourself. But when I did evaluation on myself, I found that I had a positive Hawkins-Kennedy's test, I had a positive Neer's test, I had a positive empty cam test, right? I was also dealing with pain on the lateral side of my shoulder, kind of right underneath that acromion. And I had pain during resisted external rotation and abduction, right? The other piece is that I injured myself during an overhead lift. So kind of the obvious idea of what I hurt myself was probably my rotator cuff. I thought I probably injured my rotator cuff. I had some tendonitis. I had maybe a potentially reactive tendinopathy. I haven't had any imaging on my shoulder, but I'm hoping that I don't have a partial thickness tear in my rotator cuff. I may, I'm not sure, right? So what did I do in this case? Well, I got to strengthen the area. I had to strengthen that irritated and injured structure. So I incorporated rotator cuff work. My accessory work was all rotator cuff exercises to target that injured, irritated area. So I was doing sideline dumbbell external rotation. I was doing some scaption, and I was doing some 90-90 cable resisted external rotation for 3 sets of about 10 to 12 repetitions, right? What was kind of cool is that I was more or less able to continue training with the rest of my training program with minimal problems, right? So all of my lower body strength training was the same. All of my rowing exercises were the same. I didn't have to change anything besides a few pressing exercises, right? And adding in a few accessory exercises at the end of my training program to start making some progress over the course of time. If you want to know the program that I'm using currently, it's my program on Fitness Pain Free called Ain't Nobody Got Time for That. I'll put a link in the bio if you want to check it out and try out the program. So, over the course of time, as I got better, the next step is to progressively load the area, all right? So what that means is I'm trying to find more challenging modifications that my shoulder can handle as I get a little stronger, as the pain levels go down, right? And a super easy way to do that is just to increase the load, right? And also to add more challenging accessory exercises. And another easy way to increase the challenge of the accessory exercises is simply to add a little more weight and decrease the repetitions, all right? So for me, I had a pretty fast, I want to say resolution, but decrease in my symptoms. It was super painful for the first week or so. That second week, I actually felt quite a bit better. I wasn't 100%, right? But I was feeling quite a bit better. And the next time that I was supposed to bench press in the gym, I was supposed to work up to a 7 out of 10 bench press, right? A set of 5 reps bench press at a 7 out of 10 RPE, and then do some back off sets afterwards. As I started warming up, I very quickly found out that I wasn't going to be able to tolerate loads that high. My shoulder was barking at me. It wasn't feeling good. So I made a quick modification. And all I needed to do was increase the repetitions on the bench press, right? So if you look at my training journal right here, I was supposed to work up to a 7 out of 10 RPE set of 5 and then do 2 back off sets of 5 reps, right? And as I warmed up, I didn't try to push it because I had some shoulder pain that was about a 4 out of 10, right? Generally, I like to keep my training at a 3 out of 10 pain-wise or less, so I knew I needed to modify the exercise for the day. But all I did was knock some weight off the bar and do sets of 10, and I actually felt really good. And I was able to work my way up to about 145 for the day with minimal pain. And for me, that's a success, right? And what you'll see over the course of time is that each week I did a little bit more, right? So I never ended up doing sets of 5 just because my shoulder never felt up to it. But each week I was adding a little more weight. So first week was 145. Second week was 155. Third week was 160. Fourth week was 165. And what you'll see in my notes is that over the course of time, I went from a 4 out of 10 pain, right? I went down to minimal right shoulder pain. So basically I wasn't feeling it very much at all. I was feeling quite good, right? And over the course of time, I also need to modify some of the other pressing exercises in the gym. So one of the movements I was supposed to be doing that month was a 60-degree incline dumbbell press. I was prescribed to be doing 2 sets of 8 per side, and my shoulder was kind of bugging me when I was doing that, so I knew I needed to decrease the load a little bit, and adding a pause at the top of the motion and the bottom of the motion was enough to decrease the load to the point where I can train with minimal pain. So that's a modification that I chose over those next 4 weeks, right? And as you can see, I started with the 50s and 45s, worked my way up to 50s for all of the sets, right? And then week 3 and 4, I increased the amount of repetitions, and I was able to use the same weight, so I got a little bit stronger, and the shoulder's feeling quite good. So I was kind of achieving a very similar goal as what the program laid out for me, but I wasn't irritating the shoulder in the process, and that's really what we're looking for. Okay, step 4 is a slow transition back to the prior program, right? So if we take a look at the bench press, because really that was one of the most offending movements and one of those things I really wanted to get back to over the course of time, right? I think this was maybe 2, maybe 3 months later in my training journal. I was supposed to be working up to a 7 out of 10 RPE set of 3 bench press, which over the course of 4 weeks works up to an 8 out of 10 RPE, 9 out of 10 RPE, 10 out of 10 RPE set of 3 with some back off sets, right? Which is pretty tough on the shoulder. So I gave it a shot. I wanted to see how the shoulder felt on week 1, and I was actually able to work up to, what I felt was a 7 out of 10 RPE with 3 out of 10 shoulder pain, right? So I was kind of within those parameters. I did what was prescribed for the day, and I had minimal pain. So that's a big win. And on week 2, I was able to increase the weight a little bit. Week 3, I was able to increase the weight a little bit. Week 4, I was able to increase the weight and pretty much hit what I felt was true failure at that point. I did a set of 3 at 250, right? Don't make fun of me. I know it's not a ton of weight, but I hit 250 for a triple with minimal right shoulder pain, right? So I was actually able to transition back to the training program by about month 2 to 3. Even though I had a little bit of pain, I knew I was moving in the right direction. I was making progress. I wasn't worried about my shoulder because I knew I was following kind of those principles of not irritating the shoulder and slowly ramping up over the course of time, right? And here's the thing, around 2 or 3 months, I was mostly back in action. I think around month 4 or 5, I wasn't having pain anymore. I was feeling quite good, right? And every time I hurt my shoulder in the gym, I follow a very similar procedure, right? Modify things as much as I need to. If it's a really bad injury, I have to modify a little bit more. And as I progress over the course of time, you just ramp up, trying to keep the program as similar as it's laid out in the beginning, right? While respecting the injured shoulder.